Okay, so Alex, start with you. So at SumUp, which is, I guess, a scaling startup, how much are you investing in user research?
Yeah, so I mean, as you said, also the scaling means a lot for research for us, because like when we first started, we were fairly small and there was just very little research. I mean, we had a lot of the waterfall approach where everything was like kind of already solutionized and design was pretty much there executing. And for us, it was a little bit a process over the time to also convince people about the importance and what you can actually get out of research. So I think by now we started by having one person internally who helps us also like with the logistics of research, bringing in people regularly, let's say, so that we really can have like users also for testing sessions in the office once a week or every second week. And the goal is now also to like really build a recent research department separately who can run these efforts. So I think like we're really trying also now to like really get more focus on to research as the whole company to also make better and informed decisions.
Excellent. That sounds really progressive. Alessandro, I'll ask the same question. So I guess coming from more of an enterprise perspective, similar question, how much are you investing, and are you going to the same level of kind of regular, constant communication with your customers?
Well, we need to make a first kind of distinction, because within SAP there are different, it's a big organization, right? So not everybody works in the same way, let's say, but we as a design team within SAP, we put research to the very first place. So we have had also the advantage over time to say we don't engage in a project if we are not allowed to get in touch with the users. Meaning that research is a core and stays at the very beginning of a project. And this is slowly getting into the company at a broader level, let's say, as an organizational level. And also thanks to design thinking, this is also, people are getting aware of it, and it's going more in that direction.
Excellent. Quite good. Apologies for confusing this SAP structure. With Henning, one thing we were kind of talking about just before this was, so research is fantastic, but it's kind of data in its own right isn't enough. So how do you, with your clients, convert the data that you're getting from research and really convert that into the insights for the teams?
Well, it's a very complex question. And so I think I can't answer it, but I can give some insights about the complexity of that question. So, so in an organization, everybody wants to learn from users or customers, but in a very different way. Like as a designer at a very early stage, you want to understand from a more emotional perspective how people feel when they use something, what's their unmet needs. So it's a very feely, touchy kind of thing you want to get out of people. And if you look at people who have an analytic mindset, and I won't say developers now, it's more that approach things from an analytic perspective. They want to learn about like where in this behavior are these tiny little repeating processes that I can identify and then can build for that. So it's a different mindset, a different thing you want to learn from it. And then from a business perspective, of course, you want to learn which of these, where is the biggest value in that? What can I sell to a certain degree? And if you think of it like say you're building the new Word, like or a spreadsheet app, like, and then you want to, you're going to, like, say, record people using something, and then you're pulling out data from this recording, like, say, what they are saying, how they're using it. And then, if you think about it, how many different aspects you need to pull out of these recordings, and how many different recordings you need to have to somehow cater for the different needs. The designer might be satisfied after 3 recordings, not the business guy, because he can see value, but not, is there business value? So, and there's the challenge, like you're recording stuff and then you need to somehow tag it in multiple different ways, because honestly, you never know what people will like to learn out of that data.
And how do you solve that challenge?
Well, there are different approaches. Like the one approach which definitely won't work is put it all on a storage and give people access. They will never find what they need. Like it is, you are 3 weeks into a project and people will not find what they want to know, and if they find the file, they won't exactly find like what the description they are looking for. So you can, of course, some people started to invest like heavily into tagging and defining the data and turning it into smaller chunks, but then you lose the larger picture of it. So then it's then all of a sudden it turns into a question of knowledge management. It's not longer about storing it or accessing it. It's about how do you create knowledge in an organization, which is a different question. Like, it's not just sharing information, but you have to enable people to make sense of the information you're giving them and access that in the way that they can combine the information they are looking for and then create knowledge out of it, or insights even. And which is harder, so you have to, because that's about enabling people and creating capabilities, and so you have to tell them how do you read certain data, what can you get out of certain data, like when will you have to look at a video versus when you will have to look at data or analytics. Because not anyone will know that A/B testing will only give him so much, while user research will give him, or usability testing will give him a different chunk.
Okay.
So it's people empowerment to tell them how to do it, why to do it, when to do it, and then give them the possibility to do that for themselves or guide them through it.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you. And Koos, so I guess just for the background, and I'm probably going to mess this up slightly, but BCG Digital Ventures kind of look after creating and building startups internally to then deliver out to customers. Is that correct?
Yeah, more or less. We do that for our corporate partners, our clients, so to say. They are usually medium, large to really big corporates that want to innovate but don't know how, or know how but know that they're kind of slow or not optimized for it. So what we do is with a small team we build a startup that we then launch with a product and everything.
So how would you convert the research that's taking place into the idea for that startup, or does the idea already come to you?
Yeah, 2 options. It is not uncommon for a company to come with a solution or an idea or a problem space, but I would guess half the cases are us doing actual research with the target group, ethnographic research, observations, interviews, really with a team of strategic designers and researchers looking at what people need.
Ideating on some ideas around that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll move on to prototyping. I'm just conscious time I have to go quickly. So, Alex, what prototyping kind of solutions do you use at SumUp?
So I think like we're generally trying to use like a little bit all the different things from like low fidelity upper to a more high fidelity kind of prototype. I think what's usually like the first interesting part when prototyping, even if it's just like wireframe, click-through prototype or something like that, is that it already helps like the designer itself to think like a little bit outside this static kind of world and see already in the process of designing where things might break, where we have like some screens missing, some states missing and so on. And I think like this is like where the prototyping part kind of starts for me, and where also like then the bigger team, so all the designers working cross-functional teams in our company, and where then other people's already start like interacting with them, seeing them, even raising problems then for the later development and so on, how things play together. Then when it comes like to like really testing with the user, I think that's where we usually try to move up the level of fidelity, because like while internally it's kind of easy to educate people on what a wireframe is and what low fidelity is, it's really hard if you talk to real users and you have to every time like try to make them understand what is the difference between a product, between the real product, and so on. And I think there, I mean, we usually try to not invest like too much time on the actual creation of the prototype. So I think we sometimes try to come up with like slightly creative things. If we know, for example, that we're talking to a specific merchant, we usually try to like just grab their data and build the prototype in a way that it actually looks like the tool that they use on a day-to-day basis. So I think like in the future, it definitely makes sense to have like much more technical people who could also like really use the database directly or something integrate like this. But for our use cases, we've just seen that the efficiency of building such a complex prototype is just low compared to
Mock data.
Yeah, quick and dirty and getting the results.
Excellent. Thanks. And I guess one of the challenges that a lot of teams face is even getting the ability to prototype, because a lot of companies will just jump straight from, okay, I've got an idea, let's just build it. So Henning, actually, could you, with your clients, is there a way that you work with them to convince them that the value of prototyping and validating before jumping straight to build?
That's tricky because we're not doing it, because we're building. Like at ThoughtWorks, we're building very little upfront prototypes. So it's like from the first minute, it's the thing. Like, and then you're starting with the thing, like the working software. And then you're growing like step by step, and you involve people in every step. And just, if there are certain questions that come up while you're presenting things, or while you want to present something, where you become aware that you can't solve that question by just presenting what you have, then you will think about how can I add something to that experience that you're going to present that will help the user to understand what you actually want to present to him. But that's just, that's just an addition. Like you will always focus on the working software.
Okay. So, but the software in essence is the prototype. So
Yeah.
it's small, get it out quickly, validate it, and move.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Don't fall in love with it.
Koos, from your perspective on validating prototypes, so after you've built a prototype, how do you go about actually testing that with end customers to validate the accuracy or the assumption?
We talk to them, we show it to them, we use typical user research methods to validate.
And how do you find those people?
Recruiting agencies sometimes, but because we work with these corporate partners, they usually have a target group in mind, and often they have like sales channels or direct contacts with customers. So when we're lucky, they put us in touch with them, but otherwise it's just the same problem I think everybody faces trying to address a new target group.
May I pick up quickly on the... I found it interesting what you were saying about that you only show to your users, to the potential final users, when you reach a certain level of fidelity. Well, what we try to do, since we do also customer-specific projects, we have dedicated users, we are gonna be able to access, not all the time, and we try to show them right away, even paper sketches, even try to ask them, is this exactly what you needed? Does this reflect what we discussed, maybe in a design thinking workshop before or during the user research? Does this reflect the learnings? We sometimes even validate with them even a user journey map, even before sketching the screens. Because we think that every little investment that you do in a paper prototype, it has such a small cost to change that it's not comparable when you reach another level of detail. Right? And this is only on the design side. Imagine when you implement SAP. So, every change request, 3Ks minimum. So that's a little bit why we encourage, and we always do, validation, user testing as soon as possible, even really on the very early ideas.
Excellent. Thanks. So moving on from, we have a validated prototype, we're now ready to start building something, if we haven't already. I guess, Alex, at what point do you involve the engineers? Is it before you're generating the prototype, or is it just after, when you're kind of handing over spec to build?
So I think due to the way that we're structured around these cross-functional teams, the developers are usually right there since the beginning. So I mean, we like really even geographically and in the office try to keep the designer with their product team, so they're sitting there. They're usually part also of the plannings, and they're participating in their day-to-day rituals and routines as well. So I think like usually the involvement is there since from the beginning. The designers, the engineers give their feedback also since from the beginning, so that the designers are also aware of feasibility, what they can do, and so on. I think it's like a pretty collaborative process throughout the journey.
Just picking up on that, the developers give input into the feasibility.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there's a lot of developers will highlight, okay, so there's a challenge implementing that, or there's a challenge, or that's going to be very difficult to do. And I guess this is an open question, whoever wants to answer this one. How do you balance saying, okay, there just isn't enough value in this, so let's skip that because it's technically difficult, versus, well, we're going to have to plow on because this is very important and we have to build it. So any takers before I name somebody?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely a challenge. Also when you try to deliver a lot, and I think like as a company we constantly have to focus on like actually shipping, and this is also the conversations where I think like we have clashes also with management, where it's like, okay, what importance do we give certain things? Is it design? Is it like building the right thing? And I think like this is really something also where the team knows best. I think the designer needs to have the understanding of like to what extent would it still work if, for example, we make it different. And I mean, it could be that we maybe test some things to see is it just like this nice small little add-on that we would like to add to make the whole product a little bit fancier, or is it really important for the user experience? And then I think it's also like really up to the team to figure out what is the best balance, like both on the implementation side as well as on the experience side of what we can build.
Great, thanks.
Well, doing a design-driven project, design as the priority, right? But we also have to face reality, and we have the engineers. And one thing to anticipate the problem is to get them on board as soon as possible. When you start right away with the ideation phase, maybe you have already run user research, you can get them on board together with the customer in a design thinking workshop or in a workshop, whatever you want to call it, ideation workshop. You have them on board from the very beginning. So they will already anticipate some problems that might come up, especially when you have to deal with a landscape like the SAP landscape, which is very complex, and there was you also have architects. Okay, I won't get too deep into this, but the sooner they are on board, the less problems you will have in the future. We have to discard some features because you will probably tackle it from the beginning.
Okay, thanks. I'm getting the 5-minute sign, so move on quickly. On testing, so I guess with testing, there's the balance between making sure that your product is 100% accurate versus getting something out to market quickly. So, Koos, I guess if you're building these startups for companies, how do you do that balance between, and where do you tend to lie in 100% test coverage, or 80% is enough? Or are you involved in those decisions?
Yeah, sure. Our biggest questions are in the beginning, if the product is worth building at all, and later on more of like the directions of our solutions are right. So that's the main thing, and we want to cover all of that, because if that's wrong, we're building something stupid. But then there's the usability testing as well, and there it's just a matter of testing as much as we can within the time that we have. And I guess then it's about prioritizing, and that's more in the hands of the designer, who then has the design researcher test the thing. And I'm making an artificial split here because we all do that.
Okay, anybody else on testing? Or we'll move on to deploying, because I guess one of the biggest challenges is that I definitely face is actually validating after we've released something. So we've done all of this work up front to say, okay, this is the right thing to do, but then when we release it, actually validating that it worked and not an external influencer. So marketing started increasing at the same time? Was it marketing that ended up in our spike, or was it the fact that we did something with the product? So I guess, Henning, how do you tackle that for your products, the testing of the value?
It's interesting because we'll be using something as a lean value tree, which is like showing the value that we want to achieve like first, and with these values that we're showing, we also try to understand how we can measure that, like the moment the product is out, and even before we are getting towards it. Like these are continuous steps towards these value. Like you can show something, the idea of something, is that valuable for you? You can show like a functional prototype and say like, is that creating that value to you? You can show the whole experience, and you will always follow up and say, is that valuable for you? Yes, we see that sometimes there are kind of sideways, you can get sidetracked and intensely like work a lot on UX or whatever, or interactions, and then feel, okay, I've invested too much, like I shouldn't have invested that much. But usually if you have these values in front and you're aligned with all the stakeholders on it, then usually it won't happen. Like,
okay. Anybody else?
I think it could be interesting to know that at the very beginning we weren't running as many innovative projects as we do now as a team, and we were rather renewing stuff. So that was the typical TV sales before and after. To run a SAP transaction to do a task, there were 25 clicks needed, and today it's 3 clicks right away on a mobile app. That's kind of, you can quantify something, but you can't do that all the time. For sure, value sometimes is very, very connected with adoption. So that's where it comes in, I think, where it's more about innovation, and maybe it's something more for Koos and the new and very new stuff. But also, when we do new things, the adoption is the key to measure it. How happy is the customer, but how happy are the users? How much are they using it? That brings value in most of the time.
Great. And just conscious of time, is there any questions from the audience? Would anybody like to? Yep. I guess just shout.
That's a very good question. It depends on the fact that, as I was telling before, we are a team within SAP. We are not all SAP, right? So the App House team had the specific goals since the very beginning to change the perception of SAP to our customers, acting on short frame and short time projects that are effective in a very, very short time frame. So basically, that was the goal. And since we knew that that is key to success, we had the privilege to say, okay, no users, no party. We are not engaging.
Very lucky.
Yeah.
All right. I'd like to thank our panelists. If you can give them a round of applause.